Good morning to everyone. Welcome to this session of mobility within Track 2 within the Latin American and the Caribbean Climate Week. And we are in this national event for public transportation, and we are becoming moderators for this session. And
Mobility in Latin America and the Caribbean from the perspective of challenges, business reforms, policies that need to be implemented for a more sustainable mobility. So we're going to review the strategies followed by different countries in the region, and we have the possibility to share with experts in this sector through panels their perspectives on the different topics. In recent regional assessments, we have seen that the public transportation and active mobility barely appears with concrete projects for emission reduction strategies. However, these types of measures and projects in infrastructures and public transport services without a doubt plays a really important role to improve in the quality of life from the environmental benefit perspectives, but also social and economical. To speak about all of this and to center the debate, we have the honor of having today Catherine Ariza, UNDP consultant. Catherine is electronic engineer of the Northern Columbia University and has a master's in industrial economy and markets from the Carlota Sagra Madrid University. Also, she's had the transport engineering degree from the University of Los Andes. In her 20 years of experience, Catherine has focused on the transportation service, leading planning and urban mobility projects, economic assessments, and in the last years, she has worked as a manager for the transportation company GESD and also as a consultant in the UNDP, one of the results of which she will be explaining today. Catherine, the floor is yours. Hello, good morning, everyone. At the United Nations Development Program, we had an assessment with the goal of identifying the NDCs, the progress level, and the lessons learned and results. The study or the assessment considers 20 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean that have within their NDCs specific actions for the transportation sector. Why was this study conducted? Because of the importance that the transport sector has regarding its emissions. In Latin America, it represents close to 30% of the total emissions, and it surpasses the world participation, which is around 23%. Speaking about the region's values. This is due to the fact that in Latin America and the Caribbean, 97% of the fuel used in the transport sector is from fossil fuel sources. So that is why there's such an important market share in this pie. So regarding NDCs and the ITSs in Latin America and the Caribbean, we need to find a balance between the offer for the improvement in transport services, the demand to change the trends and mobility, and plan urban planning considering city growth. However, in the NDCs, we see a lack of balance where we have a great number of measures associated to the offer. Almost all of the countries have measures to improve the offer of the service, but few focus on demand management or urban planning. So there's definitely a big gap in opportunity in the actions contained within the NDCs. On the other hand, another important element when considering the offer, what we see positively is that there is progress in the public transportation topics. However, there's a lack of actions regarding cargo transport. Let's keep in mind that in some of the countries in the region, such as Colombia and Chile, it represents 30% of the total CO2 emissions from the transportation sector. And also what has to do with non-motorized transport, which is of great concern, especially because the non-motorized transport is also a source that feeds into the public transport. Regarding the types of actions, we see a high concentration of actions towards simply electrification of fleets. Half of the group of actions that have to do with public transport or cargo transport and private transport simply is let's substitute the vehicle fleet that is operational for a low emissions technology or zero emission technology. And this poses a great gap because there is an important matter, which is the transition. And to look for the shift, we need people to stop using private transportation and to use other types of public transportation and sustainable transportation as a feasible alternative with a quality of service and coverage for this transition. This is of great concern in Latin America, especially where we see cities that have an average transport time of 77 minutes. For instance, Sao Paulo, Bogota, where the average travel time is around 94 to 96 minutes. So there is a great imbalance. The institutional topics and energy efficiency issues are present, but in a lower degree. And as we see, the mode shift is only 23% of the actions represented in the NDCs for the different transport methods. Now, if we speak in terms of progress, what we foresee, and I'm only going to share here the public transport slide, not the other ones, is that we have a delay in the implementation. So I'm focused on the electrification, which is not the step to follow, but in addition, those that should implement the measures are really far from having concrete progress. Who are at the tip of the point in the implementation? Well, currently, those that are the forefront are Chile, Colombia, and Mexico. But currently, we have electric buses implemented, 5,000 or 5,000, which is a fraction of the fleet. In Mexico, the number of electric buses is only 4% of the entire operational fleet. So I'm doing a transition that is slow, that requires financing elements, but that is not where the bulk of the issue that we have to aim for regarding sustainability and emissions. So the study points to certain conclusions that I have already briefly mentioned, and there are three focuses from the technical, institutional, and financial standpoint. From the technical perspective, yes, to go into types of modalities of transport is important to have a shift not only in the public sector but also in the cargo transport and railway per distance and kilometer is so much higher than when compared through railway. So 8 times more even if we compare it with heavy machinery or trucks. And in public transport, it is important to address accessibility issues for massive transportation and non-motorized systems, which include bicycles or walking. So we're considering the electrification of the transport, but what happens with the energy matrix in countries? We see an extreme between Paraguay and Costa Rica that have low emission factors because their matrix is mainly made up by renewable energy. But on the other hand, we see Trinidad and Tobago that has, also the Dominican Republic, where thinking about electrification is also recognizing that there's a greater gap because their matrix is not so much founded on a diversity but rather hydroelectricity. Now there's an important aspect which has to do with the final costs of propriety of fleet. I should be able to see this cost and say, how much does the operation cost me? Considering subsidies that oftentimes are very high regarding fossil fuel consumption, and where I could show the different incentives for a more just or fair comparison based on the property cost of the different technologies. We don't have that currently. And I think there's also an opportunity to share information. There are countries that have information of the operational cost of their fleets, and there's an opportunity to share lessons learned with the rest of the countries in the region. Another important element within the infrastructure is the need for formality. What has to do with public transportation and cargo transportation, There are important structures in ownership of the fleet, and the informality in this sector makes it very difficult for them to have access to finances that allows them to restructure the services, change their quality level, or renewing their fleet in general. In Brazil, for example, an owner has 3 trucks on average. In Colombia, 80% of the owners have between 1 to 3 vehicles. So it is very difficult to think about a reform of the sector when we start with a baseline, especially in intermediate cities, of low levels of infrastructure at the business level. Finally, the institutionality. In terms of the institutional perspective, we have a great gap in 2 regards. First of all, we see a lack of alignment between what is being proposed at the national level and what takes place in the municipalities. Sometimes you find schemes where there really isn't a support to the municipal governments from the national government, where there is a policy definition of entities that are not really being reflected at the municipal level. And this shows, for instance, subsidies in fuels as an example. There are countries, for instance, those that are oil producers, that at the time subsidize almost 50% per gallon of diesel. And I'm sitting, however, in the municipality, in the city, and I have to decide on the fleet investment for in low or zero emission fleet investment. So I'm in a difficult situation. How can I, as a city, do these investments when I lose the subsidies from the national government? When doing so, governments have progressed. For example, Colombia, the National Development Plan establishes that there is a possibility of co-financing the electric fleet, but that is something recent, and therefore there needs to be a reform in how we channel the resources. Another aspect to take into account is precisely the imbalance. I cannot focus only on the offer. The offer obviously poses advantages, but it does not solve an important part of the problem. What do we do with the private transportation sector? We obviously are strongly striked or have a negative impact. We have subsidies, and sometimes cities are just barely studying and beginning these approaches. We know that those of us here in this room, that basically it is a difficult decision. It is a subject that generates many challenges, politically speaking, but if I'm not able to reflect to the private transport individual the true cost of transportation, that it will be very difficult to transition towards transportation sustainability and emission reduction. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Catherine, por esta introducción.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for such a wonderful introduction that is going to be a script for the topics of the panel. Now I have the honor to introduce our panelists that I wish to invite to join us on stage. I'm going to name you on alphabetical order, but please feel free to come in. Fernando Anaya, he's a senior consultant for the United Nations Environment Program. Esteban Diaz-Rux, he is the main specialist for the IDB. Ludmila Rosot is a technical regional advisor for climate and energy in UNDP. We have Manuela Lopez, Secretary of Transportation and Public Works of the City of Buenos Aires, and Bruno Lana, who is an officer for sustainable development and settlements in the division of ICLAC. And here we have in-person engineer Abdiel Perez, General Subdirector for Metro of Panama. And thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have experts in the sector with experience in the public sector and private sector that surely will enrich the different points of view of the debate. Now, let's start with Esteban, if it's okay with you. IDB presented a very complete study regarding the situation of challenges and opportunities in the environment of Latin America and the Caribbean in regards to the mitigation of emissions and the measures What is your first adaptation that I see based on the data presented by Catherine? And with your broad experience in the public private areas in transportation for the region, what are the challenges that you have in the sector for the upcoming years? Is this on? I believe that a little bit of what we have said with the studies that we have a region. It's efficient with some of the most, with the largest areas. We have mega cities that have been poorly planned. And we are going to continue with the developing countries. And we are going to continue in the NDSS curve, and we are in upending, and this is going to keep on growing in a dramatic way. And how the point here, or the question here, is how do we move forward when we're talking about the strategies? We are always talking about the avoid, shift, improve, of always trying to. And why do we improve? We improve because it's easier when we're talking about electrical buses. Who is going to oppose to switch a diesel bus from to an electric bus? But when we do the shift and the motor changes, and it's truly, we're talking about getting people off the cars. It's very difficult. Unless we have the conditions and the incentives to have this, it's going to be very difficult for us to have a real impact. And with this rate, if once you get someone on a car, it's difficult to get them off, and it's going to be very difficult for us to have the changes that we're expecting. And definitely the most effective way to decarbonize the increase of fossil fuels, we cannot do it politically. It's something we can see in many countries, and here in Panama, prior to the protest that we have seen, it was Brazil, Ecuador, France. I can name you all of the countries where we have serious protests because of the prices. Why is it? Because people don't want to get an increase on the price, on the cost of using their vehicle. What we're saying are marginal things. Let's say for the parking, let's make it harder. But the deep issues, realistic issues that we're going to have to take, is going to be harder for us to present those. You were wondering what is the main sense. It's a topic that has to do with political economy. It's a topic that has to do with the political will that implicates the sacrifices for people, and this people is going to resist, or just going to be against this, or for the political power or the political voice. Thank you for such a clear analysis, and so sincere for such a complicated area. So now let's see this analysis, and this is for Manuela Lopez. And as we were saying, we have the coordination here of the importance of coordinating the local aspects with the national logos and with the strategies. Manuela, how are you handling these challenges in Buenos Aires? Tell us some of the challenges that we have right now. Thank you. Manuela, my apologies. We are unable to hear you. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Oh, we were having technological issues. Well, On regard to your start question, clearly there are two very important aspects. One of them has to do with the financial support to the cities and to the decision of public policies, and also as it happens in the city of Buenos Aires, there is a very important coordination taking into account that in the case of the city, many of the services and issues that occur have a very important agreement with what are the policies for transportation and the national government. As you know, the city of Buenos Aires has a very important railroad system that is administered by the current government, and also the large infrastructures are working on this. We had a very important period of a very strong coordination between the city and the national government that allows us to generate large changes on how do we manage the point of view for transportation and traffic, and the Paseo del Bajo, which is a work that connects north and south, and the logistic work, and therefore it affects our cities, and it's at the heart of the city of Buenos Aires. This was work that was very important, not just for the city of Buenos Aires, but for logistics, because we had trucks that would take 1 hour and a half, 2 hours to go across from an area that is 15 minutes, and this has an incredible impact on logistics costs. So we have a greater impact for this area that was physically in the city of Buenos Aires, and a group of companies and economic sectors that will have this impact. Clearly, there is a need for a lot of political will. In our countries, we see that it's very important that the articulation where we are in a different political designation, and it's important to create another railroad, and perhaps it's not as active as it was, but it's still very important for this city, and soon we will have this. I believe that this conversation is key, and these are people that are working on this, and this should have an impact on this to see what are the political views for and the political designations, and we have to be in all of these conversation tables to keep on discussing this throughout the days. Thank you. Governance and political leadership. Let's continue a little bit with all of the topics of the panel. I would like to invite ECLAC and UNDP to tell us about the opportunities they see to push the strategies that strategy that they see in the region, specifically the strategies that you consider that specific countries are moving forward and that are promoting public transportation and activities. If it's okay with you, Bruno, let's go ahead. Okay, good afternoon to everyone. If you cannot hear me, please let me know. At ECLAC, we've developed a focus called a large focus for sustainability that is talking about the electrification of public mobility. The post is a development strategy for public policies to stimulate investment in the environment, social and economic. And the characteristics that we have seen, and it's clearly for the cities and the potential for the electrical matrix for public transportation. The industry has a potential where we need to adjust the new markets, mining and the retrofit potential, as well as local economical development. And this is something where we can cluster different interests and to reach certain degrees of consensus. Some of the challenges that we have that are focused on looking at this, looking at the and we've mentioned this under regulations, that for ECLAC we have the regulatory framework for retrofit, and that we inspired this for this type of vehicles. We are working on batteries and new business models, and working on everything that we have, and considering the benefits that we have, justifying even better the investment. Of course, the most important thing that we consider is at the beginning of this panel is that these measures are important to improve the vehicles, and there is this whole set of tools to try to switch the type of vehicles that we encounter. And these are soil management instruments for urban definitions, and these are very important, but at least these are not of elevated cost in that financial sense. And it is very important for us to mention this on the NDCs and to recognize the urban planning to achieve the objective for the reduction of emissions. I think that's the key objective. Thank you. Thank you very much, Luzmila. What is your point of view regarding this? Thank you, Dionisio. I think that is very interesting, as Kathy has mentioned, that within the NDCs, they are not at the advanced level we wanted to. For the transportation areas, it's for that we have for the operation, and it's complete. That within everything, the context is, and I believe that we have to be more. I am more interested in seeing what are going to be the long-term strategies for transportation that are more focused on this, and we need to see more about the investment plans and the action plans, so we could see the important key steps for strategies. And also, beyond the ambition, we are working on these conditions so that the public transportation can improve, and to make sure that there is an interoperability, and to have active mobility, and those ecosystems for urban mobility. And it's important for us to see unique advice. And I believe that to add what Bruno has mentioned for this focus, and that will be to give some advice for the opportunity to have a better operation for public transportation. I think that it's key to change that trend in the region, as Esteban says, which is the increase on the use of public transportation in detriment of public transportation, because if not, this is not going to motivate the decision makers to make those decisions. And this is not a panacea, but we can contribute to increase the quality of public transportation, and we can bring the users to request this. And we could see a few teachings were at a global level for the regions, and the use of big data to understand the pattern for the origin and destination, and also to provide the user the possibility of the information in real time that will facilitate the planning of the trajectory, the optimization of the tariffs, and to provide the optimization of data safety. And if you are thinking, if we are looking at this from for the artificial intelligence, we have to see the topics regarding public transportation. Of course, we are now talking about the ideas of service and how to interconnect the different options that we have in the city. As I have mentioned, this focus on the digitalization can also bring more people to the region, but and also I would like to comment on the participation of UNDP in a regional program that is led by UNEP that is called Access, that is focused on the digitalization of transportation and is going to be working on 6 countries: Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Mexico, and Ecuador. And well, our role in that consortium, which is a consortium of more than 10 institutions that is going to start at the end of the year and is financed by IKI, and it's basically to apply our digital readiness assessment technology that is making a quick, high level analysis to see what are the digital weaknesses of a country. And in this particular case, we are going to capture this for the context of transportation, and we are going to optimize this at the country level. And this will be like a first step to understand where should we start with digitalization. Perfect. And this is going to be a more efficient mobility. And we are lucky of having a transport operator, and they are solving thousands of people in Panama. Engineer Perez, if you could please tell us what are some of the projects that we are working on of such an important agenda for climate in Panama. Yes, thank you. Well, Metro of Panama was born 9 years ago to improve the transportation quality and security and the certainty of the services. And this system is it's an electrical train system, and perhaps 30% of the vehicles that are used to mobilize the metro. Line 2 has another line, but we haven't valued this numbers. We haven't checked these numbers, but it will be good. So we haven't calculated it exactly how many vehicles we have taken out of the out of the streets. The line that we are building towards the east is presenting a great opportunity to measure this with a lot of precision, because there are 2 ways of going across. We have 2 bridges, and we are working to measure our own areas. We have the measurements of the public ministry and the transportation authority, but we are going to see exactly what is going to be the effect, the impact this is going to have. And we are trying to see how we can be more efficient. There are a few things that we share with us, and continuous intolerance and efficiencies. And we have a stational demand. We have less demand during the weekends, more during the weeks, but on the weekends on the summer, when the school is on break, then the demand drops, and we could see these costs of operations and the energy, which is maintenance, and it's very important. And here is the term of growth. And the more lines we create, this is more multiplied. And we could see what the maintenance operation is created, and we could see the topic regarding the carbon emissions. Thank you very much. We will solve the operations, maintenance, and the successive lines so that we could and that way we can take different measures on the sense. Fernando, UNEP is making a fantastic job in the region. Allow me to be a bit provocative in these questions, but now that you have made a call to voice shape through us, don't you think, or perhaps some of your colleagues have participated to this, don't you think that we're leveraging too much on technology and less focus on modality change? Part of the mandate received by UNEP to promote the unit that we're doing, and we have been talking a lot about this subject and also considering what has been discussed by Esteban in large numbers. And now I am going to respond directly to your question of what has to do with mobility in the region. Is not something static, it keeps on growing. And there are some tools that we have for immediate impact, and we can monitor how much is coming in, how much is coming out, and on the other side, how much are we discussing on the impact of electrical mobility, and to mobilize the number for the individual vehicles, and that we are having an impact of less than 2% on the vehicles, and individually more than 60% of those vehicles are dual engines. So electric vehicles, just electrics, are coming in very solidly. And for public transportation, we're just having 1% of the entire fleet of transportation for the whole region. And in the cargo section, it's approximately 98%. This is to say that on the one side, definitely the message is going through the technological part, and to the other part, we're solving even bigger issues. Now, there is something that is being asked and participate in particular for the Connect to Go, as Catherine was saying. There is a clear lack of alignment between what is coming and what we're seeing, and the countries that are committed in Latin America and the impact that we're having in those municipalities. The municipalities are working in those infrastructures, working and to see if the shift can be unavoided, and we are missing things because we are missing discussing certain things. We are talking about this, yes, and we're talking about the technological part. We have to talk about it because we will have we are having an impact on this, but we definitely need to reload the we need to renew this discourse. There are other projects that have been studied that have concept notes that have to be able to obtain the funding, but we are unable to escalate them to get the national vision to something that is better in line to the NDCs, and truly we could see a real impact on what we could see that is happening with the NDCs. I am sorry, but the organization is recommending us to close the sessions because we need to leave the premises and moving for safer places. So I am sorry that this is happening. The debate has to be interesting. We're going to have some wonderful panelists online as well as in the room. And of course, and we can work the local collaborations, ADCs that are more ambitious, integrated visions. And we can confirm the political leadership for active followers. Thank you very much and goodbye.